Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Spirit and Truth Sanctuaries, Inclusion 101. I'm going to reach over and grab this real quick. This is our continuing study of Bishop Carlton D.E. Pearson's The Gospel of Inclusion. Did you know that the first version of this book was not called The Gospel of Inclusion? And Mike Williams, you're not allowed to answer, Mister.
Yeah, we have that somewhere. Don't we have a copy of
it? It's in his exhibit at the church.
Okay.
But the first, if somebody can jump in the chat, other than Mike Williams and maybe John Thomas, you're not allowed to answer either. And tell me what this was initially called. I'll give you a hint. Desmond Tutu wrote a book under that title. Archbishop Desmond Tutu wrote a book under that title. So this was originally something else, then it became this, then he wrote something else there. That's probably giving too much hints. But we are excited to be tonight in week 57, I believe, of Inclusion 101, the Gospel of Inclusion. Glad you're here. Are you curious? Are you cautious? Are you concerned? Did you come to get me saved? Did you come to maybe scare us back into the straight and narrow? Wherever you're, whatsoever reason you're here, we're glad you're here tonight. It is March the 19th, a special day for many of us. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Let's grab our devotion. This is our Fully Awake 365 devotion. A good way to begin your day, end your evening, whatever. It's just a high vibration, learning to expand the mind, see things differently, rise above the turbulence of lower vibrations. March is the month of the power of now. Today's devotion is worshiping in spirit and in truth. We've been doing this devotion for how many years, Brandon? 3?
Yeah. Are you?
Almost
I wonder
3?
if we're about to make the same connection. Okay, go ahead.
Think about my context, my church, my spiritual community is Spirit and Truth Sanctuary. We've been doing this devotion for 3 years. Sometimes every day, other times, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and then Sunday. But in 3 years, we have not hit this one yet.
Oh.
How is it that we're called Spirit and Truth and we haven't? It's just, the sequence of things. All right, we're going to talk about worshiping in spirit and in truth. What were you going to say?
Well, is this the scripture that's connected to the name of the church? I mean,
Yeah.
you have that reference in here. So
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting that it's on today, on his birthday today?
On his day.
I don't know. It's the first thing I thought of when I read
on
it.
his March 19 day.
Yeah, from now on March 19th.
We'll dedicate our spirit and truth to someone who walked in it. All right, let's grab our affirmation at the very top. I affirm that God is bigger than any religion, yet visits and can be occasionally discovered in most of them. That's a little shade right there. I acknowledge that the fullness of God cannot be contained in any one holy book, confined to any one specific religion, or defined by any one leader. God is not partial to location, sanctuary, temple, or mosque, but is equally present in all creation at all times. God is spirit, and tonight, I will worship in spirit and in truth. So if you follow this day of devotion, it might be a little bit troubling to you, especially if you are of the belief that Jesus was only divine, that Jesus did not have a human side. Jesus didn't have to go through a perfecting process, didn't have to go into the wilderness and deal with his ego. Didn't, as Scripture said, the Apostle Paul, once perfected, he became. The Gospels talk about him growing in grace and truth. We see some contradictory statements with Jesus. He encourages us to turn the other cheek, love our enemies, don't resist an evil person. Then he says to his disciples, sell everything we have and go buy some swords. So the greater bulk of Jesus' ministry is pacifism. It is forgiving those, loving others. But there are a couple times, like he said, don't call people names. If you call somebody a name, and he says the name Raka, I think, or fool, you are in danger of being banished into eternal darkness. And so then he goes to the religious order and calls them snakes and brood of vipers and sons of the devil and So in other words, y'all can't call people names, but I'm going to call people names. At least he was calling religious, somewhat of religious zealots names. He never called poor people, disenfranchised, those who were on the margins of society. He did not call them names. But the point I'm making is there was a growth in Jesus. He grew in grace and in truth. And in that way, we see him engaging a woman, a Samaritan woman. Some texts say Syrophoenician, some say Samaritan. But she comes to him wanting healing for her daughter, who's troubled with lunacy or epilepsy, the changing of the equilibrium of the body, causing seizures at times. That people were told they had a demon. Who knows? That's speculation. But he says to this mother, I sent her away. I didn't come for you. But Jesus, I have faith. I didn't come for your people. I only came for my people. Your people are dogs. You're our dogs. It's not good to give what's holy to dogs. That's some rough stuff. That's difficult. But sometimes we have to lean in to the humanity of Jesus. I don't want to scare you talking about the sinfulness of Jesus, but at least the lower nature, at very least, the lower human nature of Jesus is being exposed in these moments. Now, of course, we know the Gospels were written decades and decades later. So who knows if these are editorial comments, if Jesus ever even said that? We don't know. We just have the text that is presented to us. But what we do know is that he didn't stay there. He didn't stay in that kind of space of, we're supreme, you're not, our God is better than yours or whatever. So he has another chance to talk with a woman at the well, John chapter 4. And he says to her in this conversation, the hour is coming and now is that we'll worship the Father in spirit and truth. I'm not coming to your mountain to worship, and you don't need to come to my temple, my synagogue to worship. God is spirit. God is evenly present throughout the universe. And so in that way, we begin the path of honoring the God that we sense in other religions, that we sense in holy books. We also sense that the truth in us doesn't resonate with things that aren't truth, whether that's written in the Bible, whether it's written in various other interfaith texts. Spirit and truth is a way of living. We honor our spiritual connection to God, but we also honor an academic study of Scripture that brings us a deeper level of truth. All right, that is worshiping in spirit and truth, beyond religion, beyond culture, beyond dogma, really, beyond belief, even beyond country, politics, all that, beyond any of those things. All right, let's grab our prayer at the very bottom together. God as Spirit, I love that. I worship you without the boundary of culture or bondage of religion. I worship you in spirit and in truth. Bishop Pearson would tell me, Donaldson, the name of your church is Spirit and Truth. He said you can't just give them truth every Sunday. I was getting into kind of a teaching motif where I didn't preach much, just talk and break down all the biblical contradictions. And he would say, these are great. I love your teaching. You teach it as good as anybody, but I do think you got to preach sometime. You got to go to that space. You got to be Pentecostal. And so that's the uniqueness of Spirit and Truth Sanctuary, that we are people who take the Bible academically, seriously, but we also have transcendent worship expression. And so we're grateful for that. All right, we're glad you're here tonight. Welcome, wherever you come from. Be in the midst. If you're deconstructing, if you're reconstructing ideologies, whatsoever it is, we're glad you're here. Today is actually the late Bishop Carlton D. Pearson's 72nd birthday. And these are some of the things that I just kind of kept, that we kept from his homegoing. If you want to come to Atlanta and visit Spirit and Truth, you can see an entire...
If those are mine, you better put them back.
An absolutely entire exhibit of from him, from a little guy to adulthood. And then this is another one of his homegoing celebrations. You know that you've impacted when you have like 5 funerals. Interesting. And then this is the day of my consecration. You can see Bishop Pearson, along with my predecessor, Bishop Paulk, and the impact that they both had in my life and on my life. So we kind of keep these things close by. They actually sit on the foot of our bed. I was going to bring some pictures down from Brandy's nightstand, but I might have gotten a switch. Might have got switched. So this is, John Thomas sent me this week. Thank you, John, for sending this, by the way. This is, I believe Carlton was still in college here, very young. And he did a record called Souls of Fire. This is part of his travels as the World Action Singers with Oral Roberts University. At one time, he was considered Oral Roberts' successor. He would have been the next president of Oral Roberts University had he not changed his evangelical theology. But you can see Carlton there with Oral Roberts, and he's singing on the back, all of these things. But I did want to show you guys this too. I don't know if you can see that face. Tell me if I'm getting that in closely there, Brandon.
I think you can see, yeah.
Right above my finger there, that face right there.
Closer if you want. Yeah, it looks good.
Anybody recognize who that person is right there? Singing in Carlton's Souls of Fire group? That is Dr. Miles Monroe, one of the greatest teachers on the kingdom of God in my lifetime, at least. And so that's just some little bit of nostalgia today. I've been reaching out to all my brothers and sisters in our tribe that were his spiritual children, and we've just been lamenting, missing him some. So we love you, CDP. Happy 72nd birthday. I do want to do a quick announcement. If you're part of Spirit and Truth locally, Pastor Lonnie Holloway's father passed a day or so ago, and we knew that was coming. It was on the way, and Pastor Lonnie seems to be doing very well despite the loss of his father. I've talked to him. My parents have talked to him. I talked to him Sunday some as well. But his father's homegoing celebration is this Saturday at 11 a.m. at Spirit and Truth Sanctuary. We'd love for you to come out and support Pastor Lonnie Holloway. He's actually doing his father's eulogy, which I think is really appropriate and beautiful. And we'll sing a little bit, tell stories, but think about how many times Lonnie Holloway has been a blessing to you. The prayers that he brings, the encouragement, the insight, the stability, the faithfulness, the hope, the joy, the happiness. So let's come and Saturday together and show Pastor Lonnie that we don't take him for granted. And let's show him a little bit of love this Saturday. All right, this week's discussion questions, week 57. Question 1, what is your opinion of, and I put in here some things in parentheses because I changed the words a little bit. What is your opinion of religions putting on the mask of their culture in order to speak to the people in a voice they can connect with? That's an interesting question. What is your opinion of each religion having a certain presentation of God that comes to them in a voice, in a vernacular, in a nomenclature, in a vibration, in a cultural way that they can relate with that idea of God? And does that mean there are multiple gods, one God, many understandings of one God, many paths to the one God? What's at stake here with that kind of question? That's amazing. And number 2, would God incarnate once, only once, in all of human history, in one location, speaking one language, and express itself, himself, herself, through a specific culture and gender? Would God only incarnate once in history in a very specific location, specific culture, language, religion, person? Would it just be once in history, or has God incarnated many times? I have to answer that for you, just throwing it out. Number 3, when did the devil become Lord? Yeah, when did the devil become Lord, and who made him so? Is the devil, is it defeated? Is his time short? What are these things that we've heard, preached, read, believed, discounted? Yeah, when did the devil become Lord? Who made him so? Who made him Lord? At least Lord of the earth, Lord of the air, prince of the principalities of the air. Is he defeated or not? Was he defeated at Calvary? How do we rationalize this idea that his time is short and so he's extra busy working throughout the earth? Interesting questions. Week 57, God and the Devil, the original duality. Pages 78 and 79 in Carlton Pearson's Gospel of Inclusion. There's only one supreme God. That epithet is going to come in later for us. There's only one supreme God. But to use the term one supreme God suggests the possibility of other gods. Interesting. Some people view religion as different methods used by humankind to find God. All right. Give me 2 minutes here. I want to give you a quick history lesson on monotheism in the Old Testament. Many people are with the understanding that after Abram becoming Abraham, that Judaism became a monotheistic religion. There's no evidence anywhere in the Old Testament that Old Testament Hebrew Bible Judaism is monotheistic. Does that strike you as interesting? So when we begin to approach these ideas, I want to throw you out two words. Monotheism is theist, God, mono, one God. There's a similar word, monolatry. So think about mono, the word one, and latry is worship. So idolatry, worship of an idol. Bibliolatry, worship of the Bible. Monolatry is the worship of one God. What we find in the Hebrew Bible, even post-Abraham, post I am the Lord your God, post Yahweh understandings, is not monotheism, but we have a continual pattern of monolatry. Okay, the worship of one God, but not the belief in one God. And not always even the worship of one God. So let me give you a couple of interesting verses. So in Psalm 95, it kind of gets known as this, enter his courts with thanksgiving, enter his gates with praise. He is the God, He is the one great God, God of gods, King of kings, Lord, all that kind of talk. But then there's a very specific identifier, God as the creator God. Well, that's very telling of the context and culture that Psalm 95 was written in, because in that time there were many gods of different understandings. But David is trying to make a differentiation here. Yes, there are many gods, but there's a supreme God that's a creator God. Well, that's borrowed from other older religions, other older mythologies, that there are a lot of gods, but the creator God, Zeus, is the supreme God. That's the one. Okay, so that's just one quick example. Watch this. Even the first commandment, have no other gods. Other gods. Now this is supposedly Moses, so pre-Abraham. Post-Abraham. There are no other gods before me. Is a play on the monolatry that is a pattern throughout the Old Testament. All right, think about the first part of Job. We get this interesting dialogue where God is not just with Satan or adversary or accuser. There's different words used there. But God is with a council of the gods. Actually, many of the translations say the divine council, as in there is a boardroom happening. God is the CEO, but there are other gods in the room as well. And so it's in that conversation that we begin to say, ooh, so if there is a Satan was in the divine council room. He just acted as an accuser. It acted as an accuser in this story. Where does this God of gods come from? It's not original to the Hebrew Bible or to Judaism. That comes from a lot of Greek mythology and other influences. All right, the last one, Psalm 82 is really an interesting verse that, if you can handle me saying this, Jesus kind of takes it out of context when he quotes it in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of John. He says, all of you are gods. Because they're going to stone him for saying that he's God. And then he says, well, all of you guys are gods. But this wasn't really talking necessarily about us specifically, although it's a great application. But it's talking again about the divine council. That God is in the midst of kind of this place in this boardroom once again, and giving kind of ideas to these other gods. And so when he says you all are gods, there's actually a justice narrative here, where he's saying, David is like, how long will we suffer these violent people? How long will you not hear the cry of the oppressed, of the poor, God? And God says to the other gods in this divine council, I'm gonna punish you if you don't do a better job dealing with justice in the earth. it's a bizarre take on it, and that's kind of the behind the scenes. Okay, so in reality, there is not really a monotheistic practice or belief in the Old Testament, as much as we want to say that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are monotheistic religions. Biblical Judaism is not monotheistic. It's monolatrous, the worship of one God, but there is an understanding that there are many gods. I thought you guys might find that interesting. All right, in reality, all religions are something else entirely. They are the account of God's intentions to reveal himself to humankind. When viewed in this manner, it becomes clear why different faiths exist. Here it is. They put on the mask of their culture in order to speak to the people in a voice they can connect with. Whew, man, think about the applications of that. Not just the religion, but even the ritual. And we talk about this a lot at Spirit and Truth. The ritual of blood sacrifice is not God ordained. It is a cultural practice that Jesus puts on the mask of wearing blood sacrifice to speak the language of the culture of a religion that had come from blood sacrifice. The worship of Molech, the sacrificing not just of children, but the firstborn child, the beloved son, the begotten son. All this is language that doesn't begin with Jesus. It begins with, now when I say paganistic, please hear me, I'm not talking just about people running around naked worshiping the moon. And that's not a slight. Whatever you do, that's your worship. But paganism was kind of like the Old Testament Gentiles. Gentiles weren't a people, they were just everybody who weren't Jews, right? Or everybody who wasn't Christians or Jews. Pagans were just kind of an othering of, Greco-Roman culture and Hellenistic ideas and mythology, and all of that was anything but the way we believe is pagan. So in that way, Zoroastrianism becomes kind of grouped into paganism. In those practices, there's quite a bit of blood sacrifice and ritual, usually of an innocent child, and mostly of a beloved, firstborn, begotten son. Isn't that interesting? And so even when Scripture records, even Matthew chapter 4, this is my beloved or my begotten son, that language is borrowed from pre-Judaistic worship of blood sacrifice worship. Anybody feeling some history here? Okay. Doesn't mean it's not still beautiful. Doesn't mean I still love the blood and still love Jesus more than I ever have. He didn't have to do it, but I'm glad he did. Thank you, Andre Crouch. Islam, Hinduism, Taoism, and 100 other faiths all have different doctrines and methods, as well as a different supreme being. The New Testament has an interesting clarification of the legitimacy of other perceptions of God or gods. 1 Corinthians 8:4 reads, we know that an idol is nothing at all in the world and that there is no God but one. Let me clarify this real quickly. By the time we get to Isaiah begins to try to make a case away from monolatry and into monotheism. But think about how late in the Hebrew Bible we get Isaiah. You're coming through the Pentateuch, through the some of the wisdom writings, through the poetic books, the songs, and all of that. Finally into Isaiah, where Isaiah says, the Lord God is one. But think about this. Isaiah doesn't say it in the context of necessarily in this specific Isaiah 45 and then again in chapter 54. He doesn't say it in the context of other lesser good gods to worship. Isaiah is talking about there's no other God, not even the devil. Read Isaiah 45 and 54. Isaiah's talking about a devil. He's saying, I am the same God that makes the weapon, that causes it for its destruction. I create calamity. I heal. All of that is the same from the rising of the sun to the setting of the same. I cause the light. I create the darkness. There's not a dark devil God and a light good God. It's all just God. So even Isaiah's monologue there is not about multiple gods. It's saying there's no other devil God. So I find all those entry points very interesting.
What pages are you reading tonight?
Pages 78 and 79. Pages 78 and 79.
People were asking.
For sure. There is but one God, for even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth. Think about that multiplicity of gods in heaven, divine councils, that's borrowed, okay, on earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords. Yet for us there is but one God, monolatry. There is one God worthy of worship, but there are many gods. The Father from whom all things came, and for whom we live. And there's but one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came and through whom we live. But not everyone knows this. Interesting take there. Paul does not denounce other gods. He stresses the supremacy of the one true God. Rather than practice duality, he chooses to recognize other beliefs as what they are. Alternative manifestations of a God who is capable of appearing to any people as any type of Godhead that will resonate with them. Think about the ideas of geographical capitalism, that your understanding of God has something to do with the privilege of your birth, or the disenfranchisement of your birth, however you want to see that. In America, we have a westernized understanding of God through the advent, the incarnation of Jesus the Christ. However, that's not necessarily the culture of other nations, other countries, other continents. And so for us to project an easy path to our understanding of salvation, we are discounting and really disrespecting the culturalization and tribalism that exists everywhere in the world other than the United States of America. It's a different understanding. And so let's be aware of the self as we begin to try to missionize, evangelize other nations. It's not as easy as we think, and probably not even as proper as we think, because their understanding is their understanding. That's what they were raised on. There's also only one devil. Watch this, but it is not co-equal with God. Over the centuries, many have endorsed this eternal rivalry by giving the devil nearly the same power and authority as God, leaving him short only in moral goodness. And in some theologies, even that is debatable. So what's Carlton? What's he alluding to here? So number one, he's alluding to the power that we ascribe to this devil character. What is that? Well, if Adam's fall under the deceptions of the serpent is a finished work, so you have Adam, but Adam is really Adam and Eve. Adam and Steve are really kind of the puppets in some ways for this serpent, this beautiful, cunning beast who has deceived them, really didn't lie to them. What he told them was actually true in the garden metaphor. But his work, this serpent's work, is a finished work. There's nothing, even if you have never sinned according to the likeness of Adam and Eve, then it's still finished work. You're born in your trespasses and you're dying. But with Jesus, we have to add things to it. So the disease is greater than the cure. The evil is greater than the goodness. The devil is greater than the God. And so in that way, even though people call this heresy, it's the original doctrines of the patristic early church fathers, Origen, Clement of Alexandria, Pantaenus, Gregory of Nyssa, St. Jerome. Even in some moments, Augustine has some of these ideas. So in that way, we have magnified the devil as greater than God. How much of creation, how many billions of the creation go to hell? Well, like 5 or 6 billion go to hell, and only maybe a billion or a little bit over a billion go to heaven. And of those, we're not even sure of, because our denominational indoctrinations tell us that only some Christians are going to heaven. The true bride, the true called out, separated, holy, justified, sanctified ones. So think about what we're saying. In the book of Genesis, the devil is a serpent. In the book of Revelation, he is a dragon, sometimes 2 dragons. Yeah, so we don't want to diminish the power of Christ and magnify the power of devil or devilology. Carlton is kind of alluding to that. The other thing he's alluding to here is, think about what's in parentheses here. And in some theologies, even that is debatable. He's talking about this devil that is equal to God, but just doesn't have moral goodness. Well, that's not true in some theologies. If you've ever studied what we call divine reprobating activity, that means God using the devil or hardening the hearts of people to do evil things for the purpose of good. The Apostle Paul certainly taps into this, questioning how can there be a divine reprobating activity and then God accuse the people that he reprobated. Well, that's evilish activity. There's also thinking about the devil in the good works that the devil has done. Purifying Jesus in the wilderness. Being used by God to teach Hymenaeus and Alexander not to blaspheme. Paul turning disciples over to the devil to save their souls. And so even the devil's moral goodness is debatable from a critical or at least post-critical perspective of Scripture. Furthermore, what is, if this devil is working for God in moments, is it really an evil thing? If it exists, is it just another expression? Think about God going down in, or this spirit going down from heaven, becoming a lying spirit in the mouth of the prophets to overcome or to overthrow King Ahab. Just think about that. What is going on here? Yeah, in some ways, it causes us to rethink the Judas narrative. Judas, the evil one is coming into you. What you must do quickly. Oh my goodness, the evil one. The evil one is doing what? Taking Jesus to the cross. Thank you. What about the Apostle Paul? There was a thorn, a messenger of Satan, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, given to me that buffet me. So Satan is keeping you humble, Paul, in the midst of Revelations to give us what? The majority of the New Testament? Or at least 7 books by Paul, 6 that were written by somebody maybe who knew Paul. What is this devilish thing what is this duality that we've agreed to? Is there stability in duality? A double-minded man, woman, thinker is unstable in all of its ways. Until we understand that there's only one power in the universe, we never really will tap into our power. We assume that the devil is everywhere, and we presume him to know what we think, what we want. Think about those of you who are on tonight who speak in tongues. When I had the experience of speaking in tongues as a 10-year-old child, I was told it was a secret prayer language that the devil cannot understand. And that somehow we have to speak a different language, because if we say things outside, watch this, the prince of the air, the Lord, the God of the air in his domain can take those words and use them against us. Think about how much power and superstition we've ascribed to this devil thing. I think it's at least worth thinking about. He is unseen, but we assume that he sees and controls all. For centuries, we have viewed ourselves as the puppets of God and as the victims of the devil. In fact, many Christians believe that the devil, there it is the prince of the powers of the air, and thus in charge of the planet. The earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof. Ultimately inheriting as much as 90% of its inhabitants who spend eternity in hell with him. Think about if the devil does know all, and he knows that God is going to bind him in the eschaton. God is going to bind him into hell for eternity. Why would the devil work for God? Why would the devil even agree to anything? If he knows his time is short, isn't he just committing suicide in some ways? Does the devil have a will, or does he have to work for God in these ways? All these are questions that we don't entertain when we're in kind of fundamentalist environments that just kind of take the book as it is. They just read the Bible. This is the Bible that God wanted us to have. Is it? Is this really what we wanted to have? But when the devil become Lord, and who made him so? When did we give the world to the devil? Why do we assume the devil has a hold on most people? The devil is in our spouses, children, appliances. My Lord, this week my refrigerator has died on us. We got to buy a new refrigerator. Micah's car's been in the shop. My car's in the shop now. Our electrical system isn't working right at our house. The devil is busy in our house. Yeah. Or it's just shift happens. Things break. It's a material world. That's just
say hello.
It just is what it is. What you doing, Mikas? Just got back from class?
Everybody wants you to say hi.
Oh gosh.
Don't turn over the. Look at you crouching. Say hey, people.
Mika.
Look at Mikas with his backpack on. Get up there and get your studies, boy. If you study, I'll get you a chicken wing in a minute. All right. How did the devil gain so much prominence among Christians who supposedly believe in a triumphant Christ? That's one of our questions. If the devil is defeated, has he come back? Has he encountered a resurrection? Maybe the resurrection, the devil's resurrection, is greater than Jesus's, because Jesus resurrected, but the world is still damned. But man, the devil resurrected, and the world belongs to him again. Which resurrection do we believe in? Think about this. Isn't it interesting? For the most part, the devil, many of us were taught to believe in, is a man-made invention. And we could talk about that some if you want. We have given it substance by our entrenched false and deluded perceptions. Bishop Pearson would say, lovingly, but I think laughingly and seriously to people, I don't really believe in the devil anymore, but I'll cast it out of you. What was he saying? I know the rituals to go through to convince you that the devil is gone from the creation of your mind. The devil that you create in your mind, I know how to help you get rid of it. But in the getting rid of it, I don't believe in the devil. I'm just helping you get rid of the false narrative of the devil that you created and believed in. And because the mind is so powerful, you can experience some pretty interesting, transcendent, otherworldly experiences with this evil consciousness. That doesn't mean there's a devil. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people who are struggling with the devil, and it's just really lower consciousness, false beliefs. Most of it is unhealthy religion that has just finally caved in on them in some ways. All right, my people, my God, have we jumped into the deep end of the pool tonight? What you mean? Said it did. All right, question one. What's your opinion of religions putting on the mask of their culture in order to speak in a voice that their people can connect with? Number two, would God incarnate only once in human history? One place, one time, one language, one geography? That's all you get is one incarnation. Number three, when did the devil become Lord? Who made him that? Is he defeated, or is his time short? Look at my glasses cleaner. I've got like a little Sandman brush sweeping people off the Apollo stage.
Is that really what that is?
It's a little brush, brushing the dust off. Then you look. Micah laughs at me. Then once you brush it, then you have a scientific NASA astronaut technology where you wipe your glasses clean. All right, talk to us, people.
So let's visit for a second.
Let's visit.
Guess what? I have my glasses coming. Would you like to get some? Would you like some? Does that make you feel vindicated, Bishop?
I can share one of my cleaners with you.
I'll get my own cleaner.
I don't want to give it to you anyway.
So, family, we have poked fun of D.E. quite a bit.
I'm blind as a bat.
And I'm coming right on his what do you say, foottail? Is that how you say it? How do you
coattails.
say it? Coattails. Right on his coattails. So I think I'm set to get my glasses delivered tomorrow. So yeah, I'm really struggling to see when I drive. It's not a good thing.
You really old. Your head fell off.
So I'll get my own glasses cleaner though.
She don't want my stuff. So there's something funny that I can't wait to see Brandy do this. So when I first started wearing glasses, I really told myself, Dad, if you're watching, this is my way of apologizing. My dad has worn glasses since I can remember, since I was a kid. But when I would take my dad something as a child, like, hey, Dad, fix this for me. Yeah, as an adult, he would grab it and go, like do this crazy like crazy look on his face, like what am I looking at? And I'll be like, Dad, why do you have to scrunch? Why are you scrunching your nose and opening your mouth like that? Let me tell you something. When I had to put a vent back together today in our bathroom, and the screw was so small, the little bitty screwdriver, man, I was looking at that thing going, mouth hanging open, fly getting them, the whole deal. So when Brandy starts doing this, I'm going to get a picture and post it on social media, just letting you know right now. Also, other funny things, Saturday Night Live did a skit making fun of how would I say, younger middle-aged women. I would never say Brandy's middle-aged. That want to still be young and sexy, and so they all buy these red reading glasses.
You really ruined it for me.
So I sent her the skit of Saturday Night Live. Everybody wearing like, I'm still young, I'm still sexy, I got my red glasses on. Brandy was gonna buy red glasses. She's like, I'm not buying red glasses. And I was like, don't let Saturday Night Live. If you want to get red glasses, get red glasses.
I'll tell you this.
She didn't get red glasses.
I will never buy red glasses.
Did you hear that, peoples? Did you hear this? When she has red glasses on, I'm going to buy a billboard. I'm going to rent a billboard in Atlanta and put her face on there with red glasses.
Okay, Reverend John Scott. John Scott is on tonight. Reverend John Scott. He said, I still have those glasses cleaners you gave me, and they are a lifesaver. I love
Aren't they?
them.
We're astronauts, John. Beep, 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 beep.
Seriously. I've been wondering what that was, like a big marker. Boop. It's your glasses cleaner.
Yeah, sending some extra love to my guru, the Bodhisattva, Reverend John Scott. He feels things very deeply as well. I'm sure it's been an emotional day, buddy. Missing our CDP. We love you.
All right, so a couple things just to kind of recap from some of the discussion before we jump into the actual questions. Gaia shared a few good things along the way. A couple other people did as well. Well, first, Guy had said, number 2 looks like a doozy. And then sounds like, let's see. This is good. I like this one. The dogmatic chosen people, quote, chosen people, heaven sounds awful lonely.
The guy say that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Guy, I'll share this, and I'll watch my language a little bit with this, even though I don't feel like I have to all the time. But there was a entertainer, kind of a rock star, heavy metal guy. He's not as popular today as he was in the 90s. His name was Marilyn Manson. So Marilyn Manson was the combination of the beauty of Marilyn Monroe and the evil of Charles Manson. Think about the polemic nature of just that name. He had one eye that was brown, one that was blue. It was this whole play on the good, the evil. I'm all this stuff. So he won, I think, some type of MTV Music Video Award. And he got to the podium, and some in the audience were not responding to him with celebration, because some of his music was very, really caused you to rethink some things and came across as sacrilegious in many ways. But that was his questioning of theodicy. How do we reconcile a good God in a world of suffering? I get it. But he came to the microphone and was basically going back at these people who didn't think he should have won the award. And he said, don't worry about it. I don't even want to go to heaven. I don't want to go to heaven and be with a bunch of blank holes the rest of my life. And Guy, I was young and dumb enough, or courageous enough. I said that in the pulpit on Sunday morning in a 7,000 seat mega church. I was preaching about re-stereotyping, restructuring or reconstructing the expression of evangelical Christianity. This was in my 20s. I was in my 20s. This is 30 years ago. And I said, I agree with Marilyn Manson. Our depiction of who God is and who goes to heaven, I don't want to go to heaven and be with a bunch of jerks. Man, I was called into my predecessor's office the next morning. Come on in here, son. Let's talk about this, because he had gotten a lot of complaints that I'd said that. But 30 years later, I still agree with Marilyn Manson. I don't believe there are a bunch of jerks in heaven, but I do believe the depiction that Christianity has given off of who goes to heaven. I would agree with that, Gaia. Thanks.
Let's see. And then Gaia had shared a language of chaos, supposedly confusing the author of confusion. And Jacoby said, for God to
Confuse the confuser.
Yeah, for God to not be a God of confusion, all of this religion sure is confusing.
Isn't it? And that, we, in academic circles, there's a tendency to reduce things to being too simplistic. And if you don't take the complexity of the Bible, it can become very weaponized against people, Jacoby, as we know. However, there was some reductionist sentiment in Jesus. Jesus wanted to take all of the complex, culturalized things of the holiness codes of the Old Testament and just be like, look, just love God, love yourself, love your neighbor, love people as I have loved you. That's kind of the simplicity of it. But yeah, I get it. Thanks, Jacoby.
All right, and then lastly, we're going to jump into the questions, but Tamara acknowledged, you were talking about speaking in tongues. Tamara said, I was taught the same thing about speaking in tongues. Reverend John Scott said, the devil only has the power we give it. And then Jacoby said, I was taught that if we moan, the devil can't understand our groanings, but God can. I never really understood that.
That is a deep Pentecostal tradition, Tamara, that I saw Bishop Pearson do that some. That he would really feel the transcendent presence of spirit, and they would just they wouldn't really even say words sometimes. It's just like this moaning and groaning, which is of course a take off the New Testament with groanings which cannot be uttered. Some of that was superstition, to not let the devil hear words that you're saying. Just groan and the spirit will understand it. Yeah, it's good, Tamara. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, and a little shout out to Pierre Chambers. So this
Hey,
always
Dr.
said,
Chambers.
Happy birthday, Pops. I love you.
Yeah, we love you, Pierre. Missing you, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks for the work you're doing, by the way. Beautiful work.
All right, for number 1, what is your opinion of religions putting on the mask of their culture in order to speak to the people in a voice they can connect with? Richard shared, religions are actually mandatory belief systems or fraternal orders that handicap their believers' ability to think for themselves.
Interesting. Fraternal orders, maybe even initiations with that, Richard. Thinking of baptisms, confessions, conversions, rituals, sacraments, Eucharists, holy days, all those become fraternal initiations or rituals in some ways. And I'm not against them. I think rituals are important to people. In my critical phase of biblical understanding, I took a lot of rituals away from our context because I saw them as painting the wrong image of God. And about 10 years ago, we began to slowly introduce some of those rituals, but in a redefined way. And so, yeah, but I think you're right, Richard. There's kind of these mandatory things that help us to define that which cannot be defined. Thanks.
Terry Salcedo shared, from my own experience, the religion I grew up with was Catholic. I had a positive experience in this religion. It was an entry point that started me on my spiritual journey.
Yeah, one in my cohort, Terry, is a Catholic priest. I won't say his name. I don't want to put it out there, but he's just a very, very kind person, very highly intelligent. In my discussion group, I usually tend to lean toward reading his with the most intensity, because he has a way of balancing ritual and the dogma of his own context with the beauty of a redeeming God. I don't agree with all of his doctrines or his church's doctrines, but I do think there's something very, very beautiful about that. And so I think that's a really healthy place to be, Terry, when we can see the Bible, religions, denominations, entry points as gratitude. We would say as stepping stones, not gravestones, but really graced stones that are introductions, that are ways in. If you've seen the movie The Life of Pi, any of you guys seen the movie The Life of Pi? There's a great book as well, but it's a great tribute to entry points into God talk, to faithful God talk. What does that mean? Pi says, I was introduced to God as a Hindu. Then I met God as a Muslim. coming, I think maybe from the Pakistan area. Then I met God again as a Christian. And he was able to kind of go through all of these different expressions of experiencing God through different cultural contexts without discounting his original connection. So my connection to God, initial connection to God, is Jesus of Nazareth. I love that. I love Jesus. I've never loved Jesus more. But I've also met God in the Tao Te Ching. I've also met God in New Thought, ancient ageless wisdom. I've met God in philosophy. I've met God in secular expressions, in rock and roll music, in secular prophets. I've met God with many different entry points, but my initial entry point, most of us, is Jesus of Nazareth. Thanks. That's really beautiful, Terry.
All right. If anyone wants to jump in, I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anyone for number one.
Let me say one more thing about number one. Let us intend to be charitable to other ways that people connect. The masks that other religions use, their understanding of language, geography, culture, history, that is their way of connecting to God. At the end of Billy Graham's life, who spent his life preaching hellfire and brimstone, getting people from stadiums, filling stadiums and getting people by the thousands to come to Jesus. At the end of his life, he said, and we have it recorded on the walls at Spirit and Truth Sanctuary, I believe there is a wideness in the love of God, that people all over the world, God is calling them to love, calling them to a relationship. They may not come through Jesus, but they follow the thing that they're aware of. And I believe they are saved and they're going to be with us in heaven. That is not Carlton Pearson. That is Reverend Billy Graham. Now, all of the handlers and apologists around him try to erase that. They don't want his library, his legacy to be tainted with universal salvation, because God forbid that God save the world. That would taint our legacy. We need a hell to praise God. Think about what the shift that people say. We can't sully the legacy of Billy Graham because he became too graceful. He became a universalist at the end of his life. I just want to take a big old God hand and just smack somebody. But at the end of Billy Graham's life, he did understand a wideness, that even people who worship the sun, worship a totem pole, worship nature, animism, they connect to the God of their understanding. Let us intend to be charitable toward everyone's connection to the God of their understanding.
So am I thinking about it right? If, as in all things to all people type of thing? Is that the context of this question?
It is, but that's a bit of a troubling context, because 1 Corinthians 9 it's laced with a little bit of manipulation. Paul says, to the Jew I become as a Jew, to the Greek I become, to the lawless I become as lawless. I have become all things to all people, that by any means I might save some. That's about verse 13, or so 1 Corinthians 9, verse 13. But it's a little bit of an evangelical missionizing setup that Paul gives to us, saying, I relate with other people, the Athenian philosophers, Mars Hill, the Areopagus. I relate with these disparate genres to save them by Jesus. So, yes, it is a beautiful beginning, all things to all people, but it kind of ends a little bit Christocentric.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Melissa shared, people feel safe when God looks like them. I have a problem with imposing the God of their understanding. For example, missionaries required indigenous people to wear khakis because that's what Jesus would wear.
I love that you used the word khakis. And I love how you said it, Brandy. Say it again. Say khakis again.
No, I'm not saying it again.
Brandy went, khakis. So, what does it matter what we wear, Melissa, right? So Melissa lives in geographically in an area with quite a bit of indigenous people. That's actually where some of Brandy's family is from, Farmington, New Mexico. We love to come back to Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and I just eat it up. I love Brandy's peoples. But what is it about Westernized Christianity, Eurocentric, androcentric? So Eurocentric people is just the religion that Europeans brought here. Puritanism, purity culture, pilgrim ideas. all of that is Eurocentric. Androcentric is just kind of male, patriarchal understandings of God. But in that androcentric understanding, God is not fluid. God is not nearly female or fluid enough to allow different expressions of dress, worship, names, cultures, because in the androcentric patriarchal way, it's my way or the highway. Wear my clothes, read my Bible, say my name for God. Yeah, that's a really good highlight there, Melissa. Thank you.
All right, for number 2, what would God incarnate once in all of human history in one location, speaking one language, and express itself through a specific culture? Richard shared, I believe God is culturally irrelevant, understood by all cultures within their own unique language.
Yeah, now that is an all things to all people, isn't it? Yeah, not laced with the Pauline, big sale, set up for the big sale, the big ask at the end. But that really is. What if, and I don't know that history is viable to record this. There's different scholarship on this, Richard, but what if there have been many different Savior characters? There are some similarities, eerie similarities of Sri Krishna of India with Jesus of Nazareth. I think Horus of Egypt is a little bit of a weird comparison because Horus is like a bird-headed god. But the idea of Horus is that Horus is the son of God and is kind of resurrected when the sun overtakes the darkness, which is Easter, the resurrection, if you can buy into that imagery or allegory. And then we have Mithras of Mesopotamia, who has some similarities. We have many, what we do know is historically, mythologically, we have many different deities, God-men, divinities, that are supposedly born on December 25th. Hercules, Osiris, Mithras, Sri Krishna, Jesus of Nazareth. Many different ideas of gods born on the same thing. Many different miraculous virgin births. So I don't want to conflate all the different stories with Jesus, but I do think it would be a little bit ignorant to say that none of them, that all these things don't have something in common. They're trying to tell a story in some ways. And so, yeah, different connections, different points. Even Hebrews, I think Hebrews, I don't know why it's either chapter 1 or chapter 11. I can't remember which one it is, but I think it's chapter 1 where it says, throughout the ages, God has spoken through the prophets. Now is speaking through Jesus. So think about that. There's a recognition of God using other mouthpieces other than Jesus. And so even in that, we get some interesting ideas. Thanks.
I'm just going to do a slight rewind back to number 1. Gaia shared, I think it's entirely dependent on if the mask of culture is genuine. I love this. We need a good faith atmosphere of authenticity and sincerity.
Yeah, man. What is that mask of culture? Is every religion a path to God? Is every culture a path to God? Well, I think we have to take that with a grain of salt, right, Gaia? So is the Bible the Word of God? No. Now, that may be your opinion. It's not my opinion. And my opinion is different from many people that I go to school with. They think it is the Word of God. I think there are some of God's words in there and a whole lot of man's words in there. And so the same way we have to kind of rightly divide the Bible, we have to rightly divide other religions, other cultures. Is a culture that subjugates women, is that a true path to God? I certainly don't want to be disparaging, because there is a tendency to look down on cultures that don't see women as equal to men. And, you have to be so careful in academic circles not to disparage, how women have to wear certain things on their head or their faces, or that's their culture. Don't disturb their culture. But there is something about depriving a human being of their expression that does not sit right with me. And I think that exists in Christianity, in Judaism, in Islam, in Buddhism. Think about how many Buddhist monasteries there are that don't embrace women as monks. There's some slowly change. Everybody thinks, I'm a Buddhist. I'm so enlightened. I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Buddhist. Have you studied the patriarchal nature of Buddhism? That there's almost no monasteries that will accept women as monks. So just be careful when that pendulum begins to swing. I hate Christianity, I hate the Bible. I'm going over to Buddhism. Well, they're mean to women. I'm going over to Hinduism. Have you studied the caste system? Have you really studied karma? That there's nothing you can do to change your karma? And if you're in this lifetime a Dalit or an untouchable, that you deserve bad karma because in your former life you were a turd and you treated people hard. And so for the upper class, the upper castes to punish you both with marginalization, being disenfranchised, keeping you poor, is their way of helping you work out your karma? Do you really want to be Hindu? Do you really want to be a Christian? Now you know why I don't claim any specific religion. There's craziness in all of it. There's subjugation, there's marginalization, there's idiocy in all religions that I've ever studied. Watch this. Even in some of my studies of New Thought, Ancient Wisdom, there is craziness. I've read books of people saying, if you have unforgiveness, you get a knee ache. The hell did you just say? You have bitterness in your heart, you're going to have migraines. That's just as manipulative as should God come or call tonight. In every religion, every philosophy, every ideology, every etiology, there is ridiculousness. So what is our ideology? Nothing. No beliefs. Openness, surrender, awareness, beginner's mind. And that's okay. In your deconstruction, you might jump out of one religion into another. That's okay. But you will come back to the center, the ground of your being. The stillness that is speaking so loudly that is saying the journey that you're looking for is within you. It's not in a specific... You may borrow things, acculturate things from many different ways of thinking, but they are not the new religion for you. The true religion is within you. Your perception, your observation, your awareness. Hopefully you guys can at least receive that in love tonight.
All right, back to number 2. Luis Melancia shared. Let's see, I'm going to read the right one here, Luis. God continues to incarnate in every living thing. All forms of life are imaginations of the sacred and divine.
Wow.
Maybe you have to say emanations. Is it imagination? Sorry.
Maybe emanations. Or both of those words fit. Thanks, Luis. Yeah, that's really beautiful. All around us, don't we see it? Incarnations all around. All around. All everywhere I look, your love is all around. Yeah. God in everything. Some people call that animism or anthropomorphism. But the truth is, the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, all those who dwell therein. I don't know if there's any animal lovers out there. I struggle sometimes to even eat meat because I sense some type of divinity even in animals at times. I sense emotion. I sense moods. I sense maybe even compassion. I sense love at times with animals. And some people say that's just a higher form of evolution. But where did we come from? Whoops. Yeah, there is an evolving. Think about I forget the woman's name her entire life has been given, Luis, to studying higher primates. Why can't I think of her name? She did. Sigourney Weaver played her in Gorillas in the Midst. Jane Goodall. Wow. The compassion she has for these beautiful animals, both chimpanzees and gorillas, that are so very much like us. And what is our accountability in our treatment of them? Think about that. Whether it's the deforestation of the Amazonian areas, whether it's America. Watch this. I am for birth control. I am for pro-choice. I am for anything that stops cutting down trees, driving animals out. Do you know that in my little crowded neighborhood, there's hundreds of houses around us. Almost a week doesn't go by that 8 or 10 deer don't walk through our front yard. I'm not talking about, I don't have an acre of land. I've got like a maybe a fourth of an acre of land. They're just walking because there's nowhere for them to go. We need less human beings, less people on the earth. We need to respect nature. It is all emanations, I believe, Luis, of God. One of the really weaponizations of the Genesis narrative is dominionism. God gave Adam and Eve dominion over the fish, over the crawling things, over the things of... So dominion is a shared power. Domination is hierarchical. Everybody feeling that? So when we talk about kingdom, we want to say king dominion, not king domination. Christianity has become a domination, not a dominion, a shared power with all things. Really good, Luis. Thanks.
Mike Williams shared, God would appear to all people of all cultures and backgrounds. Some may experience God as Buddha, for some Krishna, for some Jehovah, others Jesus the Christ, others Allah, etc.
Yeah. It appears in your language as Jesus appears for me in my language. That's what I was raised in. Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Gaia shared, I agree with Sri Ramakrishna's take on this. There are many paths to God. As such, I believe God is beyond culture. I think the transcendent nature points to this.
That's beautiful, Guy. Are you familiar with Aldous Huxley? He wrote a book called The Perennial Philosophy, which it talks about, it's not all that dissimilar from chaos theory, that if the mind is seeking, there's going to be some detours, there's going to be some getting off, going to join a cult occasionally. But if the mind really is open to spirit, to truth, to philosophy, if you keep seeking, keep knocking, keep asking, the door will continue to be opened. That perennial philosophy will continue to bring you. Guy, if you're familiar with Dr. Howard Thurman said this, I believe in Jesus and the disinherited. He said, people and men of goodwill all over the world will come to a knowledge of God without Jesus. This is Dr. Howard Thurman, the mentor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Howard Thurman was a mystic, president of Boston University for a while. People will come to a knowledge of God through good works, through nature, through love. Yet anyone who takes God seriously will bump into Jesus along their way. Isn't that a great quote from Howard Thurman? If you take your spiritual path seriously, you can't not bump into Jesus. I love that about Howard Thurman. I've got his books all in my library. However, I would add to that, it's not a pushback, it's just an addition to Howard Thurman. If you are a Christian and you take your spiritual path seriously, you're going to bump into Buddha. You're going to bump into Lao Tzu. You're going to bump into Sri Krishna. You're going to bump into Hannah Woodall Smith. You're going to bump into mystics along your way. And so I don't think he's monopolizing the journey toward Jesus. I think he's saying any serious spiritual path is going to entertain voices of higher vibration. That's great. Thanks.
I'm looking here. Gaia said, "Save the I think it's bonobos is how you say it. It's a type of pygmy chimpanzee that has 98% of their DNA with humans."
Isn't that amazing?
Oh no.
You know, that really affects the literal mind that believes that Genesis is word for word. We know that we're not even sure that Moses existed. We know that Moses probably did not write the first 5 books of the Bible. But the allegories we find there are still beautiful, still very, very beautiful. I love the story. I love the mythology. It's a beautiful story of God trying to commune, trying to redeem, trying to reconnect with us in many ways. I love the story. But in that way, my daughter is a biology major. And she's like, Dad, I can't study biology and say that we just all came from the dust. We share a lot of DNA with higher primates. And even in the evolution of the human species, you have, at certain times, you have Homo sapien and Cro-Magnon existing in the earth at the same time. How do we explain this? Doesn't mean there's not a God. What is God? Once you begin to study Darwin or evolution or the origin of species or natural selection, what does God become? God becomes awareness, consciousness, intention, vibration, energy. It becomes so much deeper than just a historical book that misses history most of the time. There is a deeper understanding of the God in you. Thanks.
So I just want to say, I read this and then Guy responded, they're like the peaceful cousin of the chimpanzee, but a pygmy. Do you know what pygmy means?
Small.
Yeah. So.
Are you a pygmy?
Yes,
Brandon? Pygmy, Brandon.
I'm a bonobos. Then
you came from a bonobos. You're a Mexican bonobos.
They're known for their peaceful matriarchal societies. Think of that.
Are you a peaceful matriarch?
I am.
You are, yes.
Brandy, are you implying otherwise?
Not at all. Brandy pygmy bonobos.
Okay, well,
with her red glasses.
That brought me some joy, guys.
Her glasses cleaners.
Thank you. Okay, I lost my place. 1 second. There was something else. Guy said that yes, familiar with Huxley. He actually wrote the foreword to the Gospel for Sri Ramakrishna. So.
Wow, so that makes a lot of sense. If Huxley and Ramakrishna are connected, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay, and then let's see. Elise shared for number 2. I have a difficult time perceiving that one way. We are of many cultures, and that requires many diverse ways or paths.
Yeah. What if God is expressing in all of those things? I think your mystics, Carlton Pearson, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, they see it. They're like, wow, yeah, how could Jiddu Krishnamurti? They're like, yeah. Think about the renown of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. By the way, that was what the Gospel of Inclusion was going to be. God is not a Christian. That was the original book. It wasn't Gospel of Inclusion. The publisher said this is too controversial. Let's not say God is not a Christian. Let's say Gospel of Inclusion. Well, then Carlton wrote a second book called God is Not a Christian. But he took that phrase from Desmond Tutu, the Archbishop of South Africa. Literally, for a while, the world's Archbishop. Well, look behind me. I don't know if you can see Desmond Tutu dancing with the Dalai Lama. They were very, very close friends. Desmond Tutu said, if there is a heaven, Dalai Lama will be there with me someday.
Yeah.
He doesn't come through Jesus. He comes through his own cultural understanding. But goodness, love, light. Watch this. Jesus is not the way to God. The way of Jesus is the way to God. What is that way? It's not missionizing. It's not believe this, confess this, believe in my divinity, worship me. All that's hierarchical. The way of Jesus is love. Love yourself. Love your God. Love your neighbor. Include the stranger. It's interesting to me that the Christianity in America right now that's getting the most press is nothing near Jesus. It has become a nationalistic understanding of capitalism and power and might and country first and the rich people protecting their wealth. What in God's name does that have to do with Jesus of Nazareth? Even these ideas, and I try to be charitable towards some prosperity preachers. What is this whole thing of that God wants us all to hoard our wealth? What is this? And then if you're not obedient, people can tell because you're poor. This is such a prostitution of the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. Thanks.
All right, number 3. When did the devil become Lord, and who made him so? Is he defeated, or is his time short? Richard shared, can one say the devil was an employee or agent of God?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think at times we can certainly prove that scripturally. If there even is a devil, it certainly is seemingly under God's control, a creation of God, working for God at times. Yeah, I think that's true.
Laverne shared, yes, I believe he was defeated. It's man who brings the devil, enemy, or Satan, whatever it goes by these days. We have to stop the blame game and start taking responsibility.
Yeah. So think Laverne, about the end game of what you're bringing to light here. Is if Jesus did resurrect, if the devil is defeated, if the world has been saved, why are we dealing with a war in Ukraine? Why are we dealing with a conflict in Gaza? Why are we dealing with disease and famine and poverty and sickness and hunger? Why are we dealing with oligarchies that hoard wealth and, want to give rich people more tax breaks for some kind of trickle-down economy? Yeah, these are difficult questions that we must wrestle with these questions. It doesn't mean that we give up. It doesn't mean that we just throw our hands in the air and goes, well, there's no such thing as God. It means we wrestle. Why are we still here? What are we working out? What salvation are we still working out after the resurrection? Well, evangelicals think, well, because we haven't preached the gospel in all the world yet. And so when we get enough satellites in the air, when we get Christian television on the air with their prosperity preaching and their pink hair and their hairspray and their private jets and their Bentleys and their 12, 13, 14, 15 houses that they own, when we take that gospel into all the world with, heteronormative rigidity, then the end will come and Jesus is coming back. Think about how culturalized we have made our eschatologies. I think it's interesting to think about. Thanks.
Elise shared, I think unbeknownst to them, Christians made him Lord. He has only the power we give him.
Elise, have you watched the Star Wars? It was trilogy, then it became 6, and I think there's now 117 different Star Wars movies. My son loves all of them. But Darth Vader in some of the movies is called Lord Vader. Lord Vader. And so George Lucas will admit, yeah, Star Wars is totally biblical. He will tell you it's a take off of the good versus the evil in the Bible. And Darth Vader is kind of the quintessential Lord of the darkness. And there's, different entry points into that. But yeah, I think it's interesting.
Mike shared, since the term devil never appears in the Hebrew Bible, although the Satan does, it would seem that Christians made the devil Lord. And when you latch onto it, when told it doesn't exist, you just might, as a Christian, be a devil worshiper.
Get those hands up and tell the devil, thank you, Mike. Worship him in his holy name. Yeah, the Satan, that's a little hint there, Mike, to the ideology or the idea of devil, not the individual. So in Jesus' talk, he says to Peter, you are the rock. And on this rock, I will build my church. The gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Well, Jesus is not saying Peter is the rock. He's saying this revelation, this idea that Peter has is a good idea. That I am the Christ. I am the anointed presence. On that revelation, not Jesus of Nazareth, but the Christ, we can build something pretty powerful on that. Then he also calls Peter, not just the rock, or Cephas, not just the rock, he calls him the devil. Devil, get behind me, for you don't understand the things of God. So is Peter the rock? No. That idea was pretty solid. Is Peter the devil? No. That idea was adversarial. And so in that way, we begin to understand the complexities of Scripture, that Peter is neither the rock nor the devil, but he is having different ideas that Jesus is seeing in different ways. Thanks, Mike.
Shannon shared, I think this might not be exactly related to number 3, but she said, I saw a short the other day of a theologian who said she's an atheist because during her study she saw that the people approach God or the divine according to the way they live. I kind of agree. Yeah,
well, there's a slippery slope, Shannon, from deep academic study, theology, seminary. A lot of what the jokes that I heard growing up was seminary is really cemetery. It's where preachers go to die because you're exposed to biblical contradictions. You're exposed to pseudonymous writings, pseudepigrapha, which is just false people claiming to be somebody but not being that writer. Matthew, Mark, nor Luke really wrote their own gospels. They kind of passed it down oral tradition from what we call the Q source. And so it becomes very difficult for people to see these things, to see the contradictions in Jesus' teachings and his nature. To lean into the humanity of Jesus is difficult for people who worship the divinity of Jesus. Yet the mystery, the unsolvable mystery, is that there was both. He was divine and human. It was all in one thing. And so in that way, people tend to go from the rigidity of evangelical fundamentalism into a sense of atheism, or they're lost for a while, or they believe nothing. And if there's atheists on tonight, I have no problem in the world with atheists. I think atheists believe a lot of wonderful things. But then there is kind of a slow kind of melding back to the center of not just critical approach, but kind of a post-critical approach that says, well, there's still some wonderful things in the Bible and some beautiful things about Jesus. Maybe I'm able to celebrate all of the complexity of what this is. And so in that way, I certainly get it, Shannon, when theologians become atheists. One of my favorite scholars of the Bible is an atheist, Dr. Bart Ehrman from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I think he would be considered America's scholar, especially New Testament. And he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. But some of that is out of his own experience. So that's his own reasoning through theodicy or the suffering of humanity. It doesn't mean he's a bad person. It just means he can't reconcile a lot of things happening around him. But for me as a Pentecostal, and I'm not discounting anyone else's experience, there have been some really transcendent moments, not just with spirit, not just in worship, but with things like intuition, energies that I can't explain, knowings that even some things Brady and I have experienced together that we go, I don't know how in the world we knew that at the same time, but there's a God somewhere. Whew, I know God is real. I don't know how to define it. I just know the experiences keep me in this space of faithful God talk that I may not be able to understand it all, but I do think there is something past this physical earth.
All right, Gaia shared when we gave the devil the power it craves. I guess that's the answer to the question. When did he become Lord? When we gave the devil the power it craves, right? Yeah. I think in the human time scale we are still stuck with the devil, but cosmologically the devil is weak and already defeated.
Yeah, in the order of the universe, the origins of the universe, what are these things? What do they mean? Cosmology, cosmogony, both the creation of the earth, and then cosmogony, how the universe works. Some people think about nature and the beauty of the intricacies and the delicate nature of this intrinsic web, circle of life, whatever you want to call it, that everything kind of impacts everything else. I could explain that to you as a beautiful creator that creates millions of different species of beautiful fish for us to see in the ocean. And I could also say over billions of years, they adapted to their changing environments and took on the color and shape and nature of things that they were doing naturally. I could go with either argument and not feel contradictory with either. Maybe the mystery is in the tension held between those things of the cosmology and of the creative nature of the universe. Who knows? Just beautiful, my peoples. All right, I love you guys. I love these conversations. I think you can tell that it arouses the joy of the Lord in my heart. I do want to encourage you guys not to give tonight to Spirit and Truth Sanctuary. I know that sounds crazy. Brandy, do you have an ability to put Carlton's legacy stuff up there? I don't know if you can find it quickly, but I'll talk long enough for you to get it.
Let me try.
I want to, on CDP's both Heavenly Birthday and the Birthday We Remember, I want us not to give tonight to Spirit and True Sanctuary, if that's okay for me to suggest that. Let's give something toward the Carlton Pearson Legacy Foundation. let me talk to your heart for a minute. I'm not all that great with raising money, but I'm good at being real. Carlton Pearson, probably everybody on this broadcast had some sort of encounter with him. You talked to him at an airport. You saw him at a church. He sent you a personal email. He made you feel like the only person in the room. Isn't that beautiful? That everybody felt like his favorite. Everybody felt like they were the most important person to him. That was his gift. It was amazing with people. Let me paint the other side of that for you. When Carlton left Tulsa or San Diego or Chicago to fly to your church, when he left the family room to get on that computer, when he sent you a text, when he talked to you after he spoke at a church, trying to get missing an airplane talking to you, guess who he wasn't talking to? He wasn't talking to his wife. He wasn't with his children. Doesn't mean he wasn't absentee in any way. He was a very caring father, very much so. But he gave of himself at times that he was not giving that time to his children. And so they are grown now, but I feel in my heart that part of my journey is to continue to help his family. And so give something tonight toward that legacy foundation. It benefits not only the ongoing teachings of Carlton Pearson, but it benefits his children. Carlton is now a grandfather. He has a beautiful little granddaughter. And her mother, Desiree, works many hours a week. She's in the medical profession. Julian works a full-time job. But there's a lot of things to navigate that in the Carlton Pearson legacy. And so I would encourage you to give toward that tonight. That money doesn't come to me or Brandy. I don't want it to come to me. I want it to go to the Pearson family. And so let's be a blessing on this 72nd birthday to Gina Gaucher Pearson, who is a beautiful woman with her own journey. I've never loved her more than I do today. To Julian, his son, to Majesty, his beautiful, talented daughter, and to his little baby granddaughter, beautiful little friend that I get. Julian sent me pictures of her last night, just growing and becoming everything that God's ordained her to be. Give something tonight. Brandy and I have contributed $72 for every year of Carlton's life. If you'd like to give that, every penny of that money is going to go to the Carlton Pearson Legacy Foundation. Thanks for doing that tonight.
You can simply put this in the chat. If you have any trouble, these are QR codes that work fine, but if you have any trouble with text to give, especially, I will say this, Spirit and Truth family, if you're part of Spirit and Truth community and you use text to give for Spirit and Truth, you might have a conflict trying to use this. So letting you all know, but you can simply go to thegospelofInclusion.com and it will take you, that's probably the easiest way if you're a Spirit and Truth. So if you go there, it redirects you immediately onto a landing page where you can give.
Okay, my peoples, we're not going to do the affirmation. We're over time tonight, but that's beautiful.
Yeah, talk about all that again. We have more people on than the beginning.
So this was sent to me by John Thomas. If you guys can see that. This is an album called Souls of Fire. That's Bishop Pearson with Dr. Oral Roberts. And I showed him earlier. If you guys can see this person I'm pointing to right there, that's a young Dr. Miles Monroe singing in Carlton's group Souls of Fire. But that will be part of Carlton's exhibit at Spirit and Truth. If you want to come to Atlanta for a weekend or something, we'd love to see you. I'll walk you personally through his exhibit, showing him as a child, going through his early preaching, early writings, the blossoming of unfolding consciousness. Most people that walk through it become very tearful, very emotional, kind of walking through the exhibit. But these are just some things that I was looking at today. This is my consecration and honoring CDP on that. These are some of his homegoing celebration things that we kind of keep close to our bed. Brandy has a couple of pictures on our nightstand of her laying in the hospital bed with him when he's and him smiling, just his biggest smile on his face. His body is starting to die, and he's just still loving us, asking about the kids, asking about Brandy's work. Just you don't run into many people like that in your lifetime. Just very, very special person. So I'm honored to at least be a part of carrying on this message. We love you guys. Give something, if you will, tonight to the Carlton Pearson Legacy Foundation. Let's be a blessing to his family. I think it's the right thing to do. We love you guys. Looking forward to seeing you Friday morning at Devotion. And then Sunday morning on the Lord's Day at Spirit and Truth Sanctuary. Loved all the discussion tonight. Go in peace.